Vital becomes local.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Reagan Tibbs with the University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties. My guest on the Zoom today. Hi, Reagan. How are you?
I'm good, Seth. How are you this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for making time for us as always. We've got a lot of good stuff to highlight today, and one thing I didn't realize, I haven't been around Extension my whole life, but I've known enough about Extension over the years, and I never realized that there is some really good research going on in Logan County that I know Extension is involved in. Let's start there. What's going on in Logan County? And it has been for many years. Tell us about this, Reagan.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we have in Logan County is up near Hartsburg. We have approximately 17 acres that was granted to Extension shortly after we were founded in Logan County. So think back into the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. And that was granted to us for the sole purpose of doing research and education. And so in continuation of that, for many years, the main focus of research there has been on nutrient management and nutrient uptake in crops. And now that I've been in this position, I'm going to be working with some researchers over on campus to do some more research that is going to be really impactful to our producers and our farmers here in the local area. So we have a lot of exciting plans, still working through some of the details of it, but we're hopeful that we can get some pretty good experiments on there starting this year and moving forward.
Gotcha. So this has been going on for a while. What have been some of the outcomes or revelations, those types of things that have come out of the research over there?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk about, or there's been a lot of research on, like I said, nutrient management. I think most of that has been mostly just to show kind of how much nutrients are taken up through, corn and through soybean rotations. I'm not super familiar with what all's been done there before, but okay. I know that a lot of it has been shared out with local farming groups. It's been shared out. I know every year in Logan County, there's a Logan County Ag Breakfast, and I know some of the information is shared in through there. So my hope is that, with the research that we do moving forward with Dr. John Jones over at the University of Illinois, we can share that research out even farther, not just in Logan County, but across the state and across the wide reach that Extension has.
Yeah, now you were mentioning to me, if I'm not mistaken, trying to make what's going on there maybe a little more visible to the public eye. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so nutrients uptake and nutrient management is a very important topic. We hear about it all the time in production agriculture. But if you're somebody who's not familiar with that type of research, it could be very difficult to actually see what it looks like when you drive by a field. You just see a typical crop field and you really can't see the nutrients and what's being done with it. So our hope is that by doing some different type of research, still focused on that nutrient management aspect, but also introducing things like cover crops into that field, we can actually show not only people who drive by, but also local producers through field days, the different cover crops they can introduce on their operations, the benefits that they have, and how they can be rotated and made part of their crop rotations.
Well, in cover crops, I know that for a lot of people, and not necessarily producers, but just the public in general, Reagan, I know they drive by a field and, they may see kind of what looks like maybe a weed or something growing up. It's oftentimes actually a cover crop, so I feel like that is even a worthwhile goal as well, is to just say, hey, this is, you hear the term cover crop and you hear the benefits, and this is actually what it looks like when you're out in rural, Illinois, per se.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cover crops have a lot of different benefits, whether it be nutrient management, helping protect the soil from things like wind and water erosion. Yeah, I mean, cover crops have definitely been growing in popularity and serve many different benefits. And even, I always like to say that cover crops is not just a one-size-fits-all type of thing. You have to think about the different qualities and benefits of certain cover crops. Your grassy cover crops have different benefits than your legume cover crops. And even different types of cover crops you can use for different purposes, right? So think of like a wheat or an oats or a barley, we can use that grain and sell it off to market. But if we use, say, like an alfalfa or a clover cover crop, we can use that for forage to feed cattle and to feed other livestock. So there are so many different purposes and so many different uses we have with cover crops that I hope that with the research we start doing with Dr. Jones, we can show off all those different use cases and show the benefits that they provide to producers.
Sure. So Reagan, forgive me, I'm going to make you go over this again. Where in Logan County is this research field at? I'm going to try to pull it up on the maps and see if I know where this is at, because I grew up.
Yeah,
over there
so
in
it's just straight east of Hartsburg, Illinois. So
Uh-huh.
as you're coming into town, you'll go. There's kind of the main road that goes straight east out of town.
Yeah.
It's at the first intersection. Gosh, I'm trying to think of the roads. I think it's. I try to remember the road that it's on. I
Like
just remember
2300, and you said it's straight east.
Yep, straight east
Oh,
of town.
east,
That
sorry.
first intersection. If you look on Google Maps, you'll see that there's a small little section. It's part of a whole entire actual section.
Yeah. Okay.
And then 17 acres have been divided out for extension research.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I see where you're talking about. It's like a little lone kind of patch there on the.
Yep,
on the
and it's
map.
we've got a nice grass drive kind of all around it. So, and it's,
Wow.
like I said, really accessible, right in a nice, easy spot for anybody to go drive by and see what we're doing there.
So, what will that look like come like this summer and next fall and those sorts of things then?
Yeah, so right now our kind of plan is to divide the field into different, quadrants, maybe, or different sections of the field. And hopefully in those different sections, we'll maybe have some, in this corn section, for example, we might have a couple different cover crops. In the soybean section, we'll have some other different cover crops. So that way it's not just an entire across the field, we have one cover crop. We can divide the field up. We're very thankful we have 17 acres that we can work with, and we have a lot of space that we can show off all those different types of cover crops and show off the different benefits that they have.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about nutrient loss. I mean, gosh, for fields that just they've been used for generations and generations. I mean, keeping the nutrients in the soil, rejuvenated and not only that, safe and usable. Gosh, that's the research and the things you're doing out there have to be beneficial, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about the environmental benefits, but even now, the economics of it, producers are facing a pretty tough time economically. And so if cover crops are able to help them, keep nutrients in the field, in addition to those, environmental benefits, that'll reduce and, the amount of inputs they'll have to add in, there'll be nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, whatever else. And so again, it's balancing those environmental benefits and reducing our environmental impact with also protecting our economic bottom line, particularly in times like this where, the farm economic outlook, hasn't been great for the last little bit.
Yeah. Reagan, admittedly, intellectually, I have tried to do my best to keep up in this conversation. It is a little bit, not something I'm super familiar with. So I ask you, did I miss anything in that conversation that's worth talking about we didn't get to?
No, I think, it may seem pretty, high level and, we're doing academic research, we're going to divide the field into plots, but realistically, again, that plot is there and that field is there to help show the public the research that we do with extension and show the resources that we can provide across the entire agriculture community. So no, I think you covered just about a lot of what we're going to be doing up there at Hartsburg. And like I said, I'm very excited to work with Dr. John Jones over at the University of Illinois, and I think we're going to have a very good partnership and relationship moving forward.
Very good, very good. Again, Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, Sangamon counties, my guest on the Zoom today. Reagan, let's dive into a little bit some precision ag technology research also happening. I believe you mentioned in Logan County. What's going on there? Tie this together for us.
Yeah, so kind of in the same spirit of doing, experiments, one of the things that I did with my master's degree was research the idea of on-farm experimentation and using precision ag technologies to do these experiments. So a lot of the research that gets done, at universities tends to be on, very small plots. We're talking very, very small areas. And sometimes it can be hard to scale that up to a large production level, particularly if we're talking, going from a small maybe 1-2 acre max experiment to 100 or 200 acre field. And so the idea behind on-farm experimentation is researchers and farmers, even extension personnel can collaborate together, bring their knowledge and experience together and conduct experiments on a farmer's field. So that way the experiments can be done at a much larger scale and therefore much easier for everybody to understand the large scale and the more real world impacts that these experiments have. And so, yeah, the idea behind on-farm experimentation isn't really new. Farmers are always doing some kind of experiment. They're always looking into new ways to do things. And there's a lot of different networks across the country And so if we're able to expand those networks and expand opportunities for farmers to collaborate with researchers, then definitely we're going to ensure that the research that's being done, from the academic perspective, is still being beneficial for producers out there in the real world.
Okay. So is there anything specific in the research, whether it's this coming growing season, planting season? Is there anything specific you're dialed in on in the research coming up, Reagan?
Yeah, so one of the things like I said, with my master's degree, one of the things that I was a part of was the Data Intensive Farm Management Project. It's a multi-institution project, not just in the United States, but also around the world. They have collaborators in Africa and Argentina. And basically that project is designed to help encourage the idea of getting more experiments onto farmers' fields. They've even created a software where anybody who creates an account can go on and they can design an experiment on their farm. They can select their field and they can put in, I want to try out variable seeding. This is my normal rate of seeding. I want to go above that and below it, and then take all that data. It'll take what you want. It'll create a prescription. You use that prescription when you seed or when you do anything else. And then once you harvest it, you take that harvest data and you apply it back to the software, and it will tell you, it'll even consider the economics of it as well. And it will show you the benefits and what really you wanted to learn out of that experiment. So things like that, that are being developed can really help spur this idea and spur on-farm experimentation and the benefits that it provides.
So with some of these things you're talking about, I just am from the outside looking in, am thinking, this sounds like a lot of, it's like a technology with, and like we know the older generation can sometimes struggle with technology and, have to be walked through it and those sorts of things. This sounds a lot like that, where like maybe that older farmer, that older generation of farmer is, they're not saying they reject it, but like, oh gosh, that's so much to take in. I don't know if I can handle it. Whereas a younger farmer is like, oh, this is easy. Like I could look at this and know exactly what I'm looking at within 10 seconds. Is that the case with something like this?
It can be, but the idea behind the software is that it's not just you give it to a producer and then let them do it and then don't have any support system behind it. That's the big element with on-farm research, is that there has to be support elements, right? That researchers have to be there to support the farmers and help them go through the experiments and understand what's going on. So with DIFM in particular, one of the main things is that a farmer can actually share access with, their extension educator, with a researcher, with their crop consultant, whoever they want to help design and implement those experiments on their operations. And it's not just, sign the farmer up for the software, for the website, and then let them do it all on their own and then do it all on the back end. It's They can collaborate with whoever they feel like they want to and whoever they want to bring in on those trials. And they can get that support system. I had the opportunity, DIFM had a conference down in Florida this past January where they showed off a lot of the different abilities and a lot of different ways that extension personnel can be involved in these types of experiments and supporting farmers. And I'm hopeful that as that software becomes more readily available to the rest of the public, that I can be that type of support network, not just for farmers and producers, but also for my other extension colleagues who want to be involved in that type of research.
Forgive me if this is a stupid question. Is this research that's just beginning? Has this been ongoing? What's kind of the status of it?
So the DIFM project, from my best memory, has been going on for a few years now. Like I said, it's a multi-institution program that's been going on. Like I said, and there's so many different organizations and entities. So University of Illinois has been a big collaborator in this, and a lot of the other major land grants across the country. So Purdue, Iowa State's been involved in this. It would take me forever to sit here and list all the institutions be going on, but the main crux has been developing this software and getting it out there to producers. And they're also looking at ways that they can introduce it to curriculums, particularly those community colleges or other colleges that have a precision ag technology emphasis, training those students. That way they can go out there and whatever roles they decide to take after college, they can also utilize it in their daily operations.
Sure. Well, and it's like anything else. I mean, information is power, obviously, but efficiency at the same time, especially on an operation, no matter the size. You want to be efficient, and so this sounds like it's right up that alley.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I said, It's very, in my opinion, it's a very, user friendly software. It helps you go through step by step, and it will give you, hey, if you're trying to do seeds, this is what we recommend in terms of, putting things in. And if you have questions, they have a very, very responsive team that's able to help you go through that. And again, with this training that I went through back in January, I'm able to even help, if a farmer needs help designing experiment, they could reach out to me and I can help them do that, or they could work with anybody who's been trained on the software.
And I missed the whole point of this conversation, Reagan. Didn't you blog about this at one point?
I did, yes. In fact, just my most recent blog post that just went out the last couple weeks has been emphasizing both the importance of precision ag technologies and on-farm experimentation. My blog, Farm Focus, we talk about a whole lot of different topics, but the most recent one was this emphasis on precision ag technologies and on-farm research.
Gotcha, very good. Where do they find that blog there, Reagan?
Yeah, so if you just search Farm Focus Illinois Extension in your browser, you should be able to find it. You'll also be able to find it on our website. If you search Logan County Illinois Extension, it'll take you to our webpage, and you can find it on our website.
Very good. Again, Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension, on the Zoom with us today. We'll take a break here. More to come with Reagan on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
Now.com.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn and beans higher, wheat trading lower. May corn up 4.76. July corn up 3 1/4, 4.81 3/4. December new crop 4.56 3/4, up 1 3/4. May beans up 4 1/4, 10.18 1/4. July beans up 4, 10.32 1/4. November new crop 10.20 1/2, up 2 3/4. May wheat down 2, 5.60 1/2. July wheat down 2 1/2, 5.74 3/4. May bean meal 302.20, that's down a dime. May bean oil 42.45, up 19 cents. Livestock market, March feeders up 37 cents, 277.42. April live cattle down 20 cents, $200.37. April lean hogs 87.95, down 35 cents. Energy market, April crude oil up 73 cents, 66.76. And I'm Jim Taylor on the RFD Radio Network.
Good morning. I'm Helen Michelasi, and I'm running for mayor of Clinton. I believe our city has a lot of recreational opportunities for people of all ages, skill levels, and abilities. My experience in grant writing, program development and expansion, and leadership abilities will benefit Clinton. We'll develop a plan to enhance and expand the recreational opportunities in our city. Clinton is a great city, and when we all work together, we can move Clinton forward together.
Paid for by Michelasi for Mayor.
If the flu's got you down, the Warner Hospital and Health Services Walk-In Clinic inside Family Medicine can help you feel better fast. CEO Paul Skowron inviting you to make us your backup plan to better health. Find out more by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police blotter, weather forecast, and more. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. Reagan Tibbs, University of Illinois Extension in Logan, Menard, and Sangamon Counties, my guest on the Zoom today. And Reagan, we talked about your blog there in the last segment towards the end, I feel like I have a Barney Stinson moment every now and then. Let's check out my blog. But anyways, I know you've been blogging a little bit lately about tariffs and how it could impact ag. What do you know? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so one of the things I wrote about in that blog, particularly in the first post, I said, you don't have to have a PhD in ag economics to understand how tariffs work. So basically, trade has been around for a long, long time. We can think back to the Silk Road and how, goods got from Europe to East Asia. And now trade that we know it has been kind of similar since sort of, post World War II, 1940s and 50s, the idea of free trade, right? That there are no barriers, that countries can freely exchange goods, people can move freely, things of that nature. Well, now we kind of find ourselves in this period where tariffs have become more and more prevalent. Basically, how a tariff works is that, it could be either on imports or exports, so goods that we are bringing in or goods that we're sending out. And it could be in a couple different ways. So, an example, let's say that I am a home builder in Wisconsin and I need to bring in lumber. Well, I found a lumber provider in Canada. Normally, let's say I pay $100 a ton for lumber. I'm just making up these numbers off the top of my head. But let's say now there's a 25% tariff on lumber being imported from Canada. So now, as that home builder in Wisconsin, instead of paying $100 per ton for lumber, I'm now having to pay $125 per ton, given that extra tariff. There are different reasons why countries can impose tariffs. One of the more common explanations is that they can protect domestic industries. So let's say that in the United States, let's say we're trying to protect our domestic beef industry or pork industry from maybe cheaper goods coming in from other countries. Tariffs also, like I mentioned, do provide a little bit of revenue into the country, right? So whoever is being responsible for importing or exporting a good that is subject to a tariff, they're the ones that are having to pay for that tariff. So that money that those tariffs are applied to, that comes back as revenue straight to the government. And so, like I said, tariffs are nothing new. It's just we're starting to see a little bit, then used a little bit more to try to achieve certain purposes. And they can have pretty severe impacts. And I think we learned our lesson in 2017, 2018, and even into 2019 with how tariffs were applied then.
Sure. Well, not to kind of put you on the spot, but any outlook how tariffs could impact ag this time around then, Reagan?
Well, it's very interesting. We don't really know kind of the full effects, especially in the immediate term. What we can look at is going back to the 2018, 2019 trade war. So following that, the USDA did an analysis on the impacts of that, particularly on the agricultural sector. And one of the things that it found was that, particularly when we look at the trade war that happened with China. So when tariffs were imposed on China, they not only imposed retaliatory tariffs on the United States, but they also reduced the amount of goods that they imported from the United States. So kind of a double whammy effect, really, if you want to look at it that way. So states like Illinois and Iowa were the most impacted because what are the two products that we really produce the most of, particularly between both Iowa and Illinois? It's soybeans. And China relies a lot on soybeans, especially if they're trying to expand their domestic pork industry. And then also with Iowa grows a lot of pork. And so the reduction of pork imports from the Chinese perspective, that really had a very devastating impact on our producers across Illinois and Iowa. But it's not just those two states,
And Reagan, I'm sorry. I hate to do this to you, my friend. I'm so sorry. I have to let you go. I've run out of time with you. Reagan Tibbs, U of I Extension, our guest on the Zoom. Network News is now.
The Big 50.